Know anything else, ladies and gentlemen, I know life is never, ever going to be the same in America because there are too many devastating things that are going on right now that are way, way beyond human control. And these stories are coming out for a reason. People are panicking. They are scared of what they're seeing, and they are also afraid of what's to come. This came out today on the Washington Post. There's something terribly wrong. Americans are dying young at alarming rates. Now, just remember, this is happening simultaneously as the baby boomers are dying out. I know things are not moving as fast as some may want, but it is definitely moving along. So, ladies and gentlemen, death rates from suicides, drug overdoses, liver disease, and dozens of other causes have been rising over the past decade for young and middle aged adults, driving down overall life expectancy in the United States for 3 consecutive years, according to a strikingly bleak study published Tuesday that looked at the past 6 decades of mortality data. Now, how many of you have heard for the last 10 years, young and middle aged adults have been dying to the point where they're driving down the life expectancy? See, this stuff is coming out to the forefront, ladies and gentlemen, because it can't be hidden anymore. If they could continue to hide this, they would. The report published in the Journal of the American Medical Association was immediately hailed by outside researchers for its comprehensive treatment of a still enigmatic trend, the reversal of historic patterns in longevity. So Americans for a long time start seeing more longevity. Virtually every group is living longer. Now that is reversing. It's reversing now. Despite spending more on healthcare than any other country, the United States has seen increasing mortality and falling life expectancy for people ages 25 to 64, who should be in the prime of their lives, while other wealthy nations have generally experienced continued progress in extending longevity. Although earlier research emphasized rising mortality among non-Hispanic whites, the broad trend detailed in this study cuts across gender, racial, and ethnic lines. By age group, in death rates from 2010 to 2017, 29% has been among people ages 25 to 34. These people should be out here working. You know, that's usually the age you're building your career. You're building up your income, and these folks are going to the grave. All right, so this map shows increases in midlife mortality rates from 2010 to 2017. So if you see no color, those are the states that had no increase in life expectancy. So they had no increase at all. So the states where adults live in economically distressed communities saw the biggest increases in deaths. Okay, so the pale pink that you see right here, the pale pink, are states that saw 1 to 5% increase in deaths. All right, so no change if it's no color. And that's only 2 states, California and Wyoming. And the darker shade of pink that you see here, the darker shades of pink, you see a 6 to 10% increase in deaths in those states, okay, which seems to be the majority. And then you have a darker pink right here. And those are the states that saw an 11 to 15% increase in deaths. Now look at this: New Mexico, South Dakota, Ohio, West Virginia, which I'm not surprised. The drug addiction has been horrible in these 2 states. Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire saw 20% or more in increases in deaths. Wow. Wow. You know, when you start getting in double digits, that is very significant. It really is. The findings are sure to fuel political debate about causes and potential solutions because the geography of rising death rates overlaps to a significant extent with states and regions that are hotly contested in the run-up to the 2020 presidential election shit. They ain't even talking about nothing like this in those debates. They're not talking about anything like this. About a third of the estimated 33,000 excess deaths that the study says occurred since 2010 were in just 4 states: Ohio, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, and Indiana. And all of those states have struggled badly, especially in the rural areas with drug addiction and deaths. The first 2 of which are critical swing states in presidential elections: Ohio and Pennsylvania, the states with the biggest percentage rise in death rates among working age people in this decade. 23.3% is New Hampshire, the first primary state. And ladies and gentlemen, I remember when I first started coming on here with stories for opioids, New Hampshire was one of those states that was hit very hard back in 2016 when I came on to YouTube. It's supposed to be going down, as it is in other countries, said the lead author of the report, Stephen H. Wolf, director emeritus of the Center on Society and Health at Virginia Commonwealth University. The fact that number is climbing, there's something terribly wrong. He said many factors are at play. The opioid plague is a major driver of the worrisome numbers, but far from the sole cause. So he's saying, yeah, the drug addiction is definitely part of it, but it's not the only reason. They found, the study found that improvements in life expectancy, largely because of lower rates of infant mortality, began to slow in the 1980s, long before the opioid plague became a national tragedy. The 33,000 excess deaths are an estimate based on the number of all-cause midlife deaths from 2010 to 2017 that would be expected if mortality was unchanged versus the number of deaths actually recorded by medical examiners. Some of it may be due to obesity. Some of it may be due to drug addiction. Some of it may be due to distracted driving from cell phones. So people are getting in a number of accidents while talking on their cell phone behind the wheel, and those death rates are rising, Wolf said. Given the breadth and pervasiveness of the trend, it suggests that the cause has to be systematic, that there's some root cause that's causing adverse health across many different dimensions for working age adults. The all cause death rate, meaning deaths per 100,000 people, rose 6% from 2010 to 2017 among working age people in the United States. Men overall have higher all cause mortality than women, but the report pulls out some disturbing trends. Women are succumbing to diseases once far more common among men, even as men continue to die in greater absolute numbers. The risk of death from drug overdoses increased 486% for midlife women between 1999 and 2017. But yet Trump is patting himself on the back, talking about it's less opioid use because of him. Well, the articles are sure not matching anything that he's saying. The risk increased 351% for men in that same period. Wow. So the women are actually dying from drug overdoses slightly higher than the men, actually more than slightly higher, a lot higher. When you look at this, women also experience a bigger relative increase in risk of suicide and alcohol, where they said a lot of women over 60 have drinking problems, especially among baby boomers. Increasing midlife mortality began among whites in 2010, Hispanics in 2011, and African Americans in 2014, the study states. Outside researchers praised the study for knitting together so much research into a sweeping look at U.S. mortality trends. The report has universal relevance. It has broad implications for all of society, said Howard Koh, a professor of public health at Harvard University, who was not part of the research team. The report reveals a broad erosion in health with no single smoking gun, said Ellen Mira, a professor at Dartmouth Institute for Health Policy and Clinical Practices. Clinical practice. There's something more fundamental about how people are feeling at some level, whether it's economic, whether it's stress, whether it's deterioration of family, she said. Well, I can see why that's happening. Emphasis have never been put on the family. It's been put on careers. Go to college, get a career, and no emphasis on the importance of having families. They just skipped right over that. Like that was not even an important factor for the future. People are feeling worse about themselves and their futures, and that's leading them to do things that are self destructive and not promoting health. The JAMA report looked at life expectancy and mortality across the country from 1959 through 2017. And you know what? In the late 50s, ladies and gentlemen, that's when the birth decline was first notable in the 1950s. Final life expectancy numbers for 2018 will soon be released by the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention. The general trend, life expectancy improved a great deal for several decades, particularly in the 70s, then slowed down, leveled off, and finally reversed course after 2014. Look, they're saying so when it finally showed up in the African American time period where they said it hit us in 2014, that's when everything reversed. Decreasing 3 years in a row. The average life expectancy in the United States fell behind that of other wealthy countries in 1998, and since then, the gap has grown steadily. Experts refer to this gap as America's health disadvantage. There are some factors that manifest themselves only gradually, such as the effects of smoking. For example, in the late 60s and early 70s, cigarette companies aggressively marketed to women. Yeah, I remember all the Virginia Slim ads all over the place and on billboards back then, and it was heavily geared towards women. I remember that. And the health effects of that push may not show up for decades. Princeton professors Ann Case and Angus Deaton, they are the ones that coined the phrase death of despair, whose much publicized report in 2015 highlighted the death rates in middle aged whites, published a paper in 2017 pointing to a widening gap in health associated with levels of education, a trend dating to the 1970s. Case told reporters their research showed a sea of despair in the United States among people with only a high school diploma or less. She declined to comment on the new report. Obesity is a significant part of the story. The average woman in America today weighs as much as the average man half a century ago, and men now weigh about 30 pounds more. Most people in the United States are overweight. An estimated 71.6% of the population ages 20 and older, according to the CDC. That figure includes the 39.8% who are obese, defined as having a body mass of 30 or higher in adults. 18.5 to 25 is the normal range. Interesting. Obesity is also rising in children. Nearly 19% of the population ages 2 to 19 is obese. Wow. Wow. But I know that's true because one thing I do notice, y'all, I see more overweight children today than when I was growing up. I didn't see as many as I see today. But you know that the eating habits have changed because, see, back in the day, we didn't do a lot of fast food. And there were not as many fast food joints around like you see today. And I think that made all the difference in the world. These kids are acquiring obesity in their early teen years, sometimes under the age of 10, said S.J. Oshansky, a professor of public health at the University of Illinois at Chicago. When they get up into their 20s, 30s, and 40s, they're carrying the risk factors of obesity that were acquired when they were children. We didn't see that in previous generations exactly. I know I didn't see it in mine. This isn't a one time phenomena, he added. It's going to be echoed through time. And I agree with that. Well, when they come out with more data, which they're saying they are on the reversal in life expectancy, I'll definitely bring those videos to you. But y'all, please tell me what you think about this. There's a lot of interesting things going on in this country. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.